All right, so let's get started. Who is ready to learn a little bit about prototyping tonight?
Yes.
All right. So I am Dr. Emily Pritchard. I have a PhD in biomedical engineering, and so I come from prototyping really from my engineering background, but we will cover all types of prototyping today. And you can always ping me if you have questions afterwards as you go through your prototyping process. I'd be happy to help you out. But first, I'd like to learn a little bit about you all. What types of things do you want to prototype? What made you want to come to this workshop? What do you need to prototype? Anybody? An app? Okay. More apps? Anybody have something non-software? Okay. What? Can you give me just a general? You don't have to just.
Yeah, really quick. It's a caffeinated smoothie.
Okay. Cool. So you have a full product, physical product.
Yes, but we don't have a recipe for it yet.
Okay.
So I guess that's where we need to go.
Yes. All right. Anybody else? Who doesn't know what they want to prototype yet? Okay, so that's about half of you. And that's a fine place to be too, especially at this stage in the process. Because when I come to prototyping, I come at it from a design thinking perspective. And you actually saw on this slide, really, well, what exists, right? What does the current market look like? What is the problem? You're going to address this, right? You know that there's an issue. But the question is, what kind of difference can you make with that issue, right? There are probably so many different ways that you could, this is why this expands, it's a lot bigger. What would your solution look like? You're imagining this right now, right? And so then, right here, the prototyping phase, you're actually testing out those ideas. You want to wow people with it. You know it's not going to be completely done, right? But you need to prove that your idea has legs. And you need to convince people that they might want to buy it, right? So in the case of a smoothie, do you need a final recipe? Maybe not, but you need to know the kinds of things that people are looking for to see whether your prototype is viable, right? So, and then we get into, to me, prototyping and testing are kind of that continuous cycle. So your prototype, you're going to test it. Do people want to drink my smoothie? Do people want to buy my app? Or do they like a particular feature of my app? So then in this testing phase, what works, you're going to find out that some things work and some things don't. So you go back to your prototype and you figure that out. And when you're ready to actually get this into product development, then you can get funding and you can do it all right. You can, in my case in healthcare and medicine, you got to do regulatory, the whole 9 yards. You got to document everything all the way through so the FDA will approve you at the end of that process. And so in some cases for an app, that might be, we got to get approved by the App Store. And we got to have people be able to download this, and we want them to actually open it and use it. So in design thinking, we will be right here in this final portion. How many of you have been to a workshop talking about how you get to a prototyping phase? A few. Not many. So before we go to what do we want to make, let's talk about how we get there for a second, right? Because some of the people who didn't raise their hands for coming to a previous workshop also said that they weren't sure what they want to prototype. So it's it's essential to be able to say, we really know what we want to address before we start building stuff. It's going to save you a lot of time and effort. And the cool thing about this process is you can do it pretty quickly and easily. Actually, I even considered having us do it within this hour, and you leave with a prototype in your hand. And so there are all levels of prototypes, right? You could have an app prototype that is a sketch on a white piece of paper. Or you could have a functional thing where people can click buttons and they can say, I really like this, I really don't like that. And that can help them visualize what it might be like to interact with your product. And so the sooner you can get something in someone's hand for feedback, the better off you are. So we'll talk about why you don't want to wait to the very last minute to get something in somebody's hands. And also why, what should your prototype have in it? Does it need to have every single nice button so you wow people and you go, of course I want to buy it? Or do you want to give them something really, really rough? And they go, I can't tell you what you want to do. I'm not interested. And so the answer is actually somewhere in the middle there. So to me, if I'm evaluating feasibility of something, or I even am evaluating a product, I want to know, let's see, do I have a pointer here? Woo! I want to know people want it, right? I also want to know, does it work? And does it work is a pretty big one. And sometimes people miss that, right? And you get all the way to a launch and a release, and people and go, it's too buggy, I can't use it. And you're dead on arrival, right? So the last one is through your business model canvas. You want to make sure that even if people buy it, you have a sustainable business, right? How is this helping your bottom line? And if you spend all of your time in R&D, because that happens pretty quickly, let's say that in my field, let's say I hire 5 engineers. Maybe I don't even hire them. Maybe I just get some consultants. And I want them to work on this project. And I say, we've got 6 months, we need to prototype this. And I did this in real life. I ran a consulting company doing strategic planning and technology development for med tech companies. And so people say, I've got this idea, I don't know what to do with it. Or I've done this much, but it's not working, why? And they come to me to fix those problems. So sometimes they're way down, they think they want it, right? It's not working. Or they may have a good business plan, or they may not. But you have to have each of these pieces, because if you're not operating right here in the middle, you're going to be for a world of hurt. And so if you want to win the innovation challenge as well, you want to be up here. And you want to be able to justify it in 5 minutes. So the question is going to be, how do you prototype that enough to prove to the judges or a potential investor that this is worth doing? So here's another way to look at it. You understand your problem. This is actually the Stanford method of design thinking, and I present it in a few different forms because it's the same concept, but you might see it in different ways, different places. I trained under the Stanford method, but you want to say, what is our problem? And you actually start to realize, oh, that's a really big problem. It's a lot bigger than I initially thought, right? And so then you need to be able to come down and define what is the problem you are going to address. And get a really clear problem statement of what problem are you going to solve. Then you can start thinking about what prototype you want to make, right? So you can start ideating. What are the ways that you could address that problem? Some of them might be social. Some of them might be software. Some of them might be devices. They might be food products. They might be processes. They might be experiences, right? It could be a lot of different things. It could be multiple of those that are all working together. You should list all those ideas without a lot of bounds on them. Okay, so maybe you don't have $5 million. It's okay, write it down. Because if an investor thinks it's a good idea and wants to give you $5 million to do it, great, right? Now, then you can take your ideation and focus that back down. What is the solution you are going to prototype? And this is where we get into an MVP. Who's heard of an MVP? Okay, you want to share? Yes. And so why would we have a minimum viable product? What does that mean in a practical sense? So we say, here I know what my solution needs to be, and I need an MVP, a minimum viable product, to show that this works, to show that people want it, to show that it can be done. So pretty much like I forgot my cool microphone. There you go.
The word is slipping out of my head, but pretty much like a miniature. So if I wanted to create a prototype of like engineering or something like that, instead of creating a whole building, I would first start off with the paper. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know, but pretty much like a miniature scale thing of what you actually want to produce and create, just to be sure that at that miniature scale that it is reasonable and viable.
Great answer. Anybody else? So let's say that we were going to create a new water bottle. And so we decide that because existing water bottle options are not enough, and I think a lot of people have walked this path because there's so many different water bottles out there. And they say, my water bottle is going to be cooler, and here's why. This is my solution. I'm going to have a water bottle that, I don't know, I heard marijuana over here earlier. So let's say that you're going to soak the marijuana leaves in your water. I don't know, but it's something that hasn't been done before. This is not a real suggestion. But let's say that you wanted to, do you need to have your fancy branded thing, or could you actually just take a mesh packet and try soaking it and see if people want it? So you could do the same thing with your recipes, right? And so you actually, instead of needing a final recipe before you go prototype something, you could prototype a lot of recipes and test the customer market, right? Because the faster you get, fail small. The point of a prototype is not to wow everybody. I mean, yeah, in the end, that's the goal. But that's before you launch. So it's okay to get real feedback. So let's also say that if you were going to design a water bottle, and I brought you a beautiful, shiny thing, completely well-made, and you say, this is my water bottle, and I hand it to you for feedback, what would be your reaction to it? Anybody? Well, my point is that if it looks really polished, people will see all that time you've spent on it, and they don't want to hurt your feelings. So are you going to get real feedback? Probably not. And so that's actually something that with the engineering teams that I've worked with, it's a big hurdle. Because we want to make it look great, right? We want to get with our design team too and make sure that it's gorgeous because we want to have the packaging. We want to make sure that the function is all perfect. But in the end, how do you decide how rough to let it be so you get good feedback and how perfect so that people are still wowed and say they want to use it? So I hope that today we'll be able to walk through a little bit of how we can find that balance in each one of your projects because it might be a little bit different in each.
Would you say that one way to avoid people not being honest is to like give it to them, leave, and give them like an anonymous survey just so that they can like truly be honest and they don't care, they can say anything?
Well, you've hit on two really key things that, and we'll get to them in a little bit more detail. But one is that they have a place to give honest, anonymous feedback. And the second is that they have time to think about it, right? Those are two really key things for like being a tester, right? But first, let's focus on how do we get to something to test. And so you want to build a real thing, right? And of course, we would like to get all the way right here, real enough to test. This is going to take you a while to buy that or to build it. Whatever it is you're going to do. Maybe you have to design it and then buy it. Maybe you need to design it and then stick it in a blender, right? Whatever it might be. So in this case, it's going to take you some time, and time is money, right? And in the InNOLEvation Challenge, you also need time enough to hit these milestones so that you can prove to people, so that then you can prove to the judges that you do have an MVP, people want this, it works, let's do it. So in this case, I'm going to borrow from Jake Knapp. He actually does design sprints for Google. And I really like the way that he presents prototyping because it applies to all types of prototypes, whether they be apps or products or, in my case, for engineering, it's usually devices or processes. So if I want to say my solution is to put you through an MRI scanner and then do machine learning on your images and then get you a better diagnosis, that's a lot of different things to prototype, right? There's a process, there's personnel involved to actually get an image. And so your MVP might not be clean cut. So in the case of the app, is it solely the app, or is there other things that you need to prototype, like how to reach somebody with it? But you can cover some of that in your go-to-market strategy. So what you actually want to do is you don't build the real thing, right? There's a reason we call this a prototype and not a product. So how do we spend as little amount of time as possible? And I'm an engineer, I like graphs. So I hope you'll tolerate my use of graphs. And these are unofficial, fun graphs, but I think that they illustrate really well what we'd like to do. So we need to get right here. What is real enough, right? We could always go more real, make it look great. But then we start spending a ton of time over here that's not actually getting us that much closer to launch, right? You do want to have all the kinks worked out at launch. Or you could do like Google and release a lot of beta, but a beta would still be up here, right? So, where's that alpha? Where is your prototype that might even be pre-alpha, right? That can help convince people. And you might be down here. What would happen if this is where you land? It's a little bit more, it's mostly real. Right. Well, anybody else? So why wouldn't you win? Because I actually have seen people, not necessarily InNOLEvation Challenge, but I've seen people get investments with something that is not real whatsoever. And that's a great case study to say, why? How do they convince an investor even though the product wasn't real?
It could fix the problem, but it's not as efficient or as nice looking or as the problem could be fixed better, but it shows that there is a solution in the immediate future.
And to an investor, have a bigger leap to get from here to launch, right? So it's going to take more time and effort. So some people would come with just an idea. There's nothing real about it. But most people don't want to take action on that. That's why the burden is on you to prove it enough. And so if you're iterating, let's say you think that it's real enough to test, and you take it to see, and you fail. That's okay. You do it early, before the final round, before semifinals even, right? Test on your friends and your family, or sit on Landis and have a couple people walking by, try it out. And then you'll get some really good feedback so that the final one really works. And you can say, in this survey, this many people said they would really like it. So we'll talk about how to quantify that your MVP really is an MVP. And we'll come back to those three things. People need to want it, it needs to work, and it needs to be business viable. So if we come up here, and I've labeled this red because this just shows investors that you've wasted a lot of time and potentially a lot of resources. So you don't want to wind up here. And most likely, because of the tough timelines for the challenge, you're not going to wind up over there. So I'm not going to cover that too awfully much. But you should also know that if you do overshoot, people are like, wow, why are you in this challenge? Like, can we get you in front of an angel investor? And you can speed the process, and then you win everything, right? So what's too bad about that? But you've then obviously reached this bar that it's real enough to test, and people do want it, and so you can move on to the next stage, which is definitely, you're still not at launch. You could be at this for actually quite a while, right? Or maybe your MVP for feasibility is a little bit different than your MVP for launch, right? So we're aiming right there, the sweet spot. It's going to be a little bit different for each person, but I can't tell you where it is. How helpful is that? I'm just so glad you have me. So this is a prototype for InNOLE. It's so of course I choose examples that I relate to in my own work, and this is a prosthetic hand for kids. And they are 3D printed. But to figure out how to move the fingers, right? That's a fairly complex engineering thing, but they wanted to keep it pretty simple, so they 3D print it. But this isn't 3D printed. This is like a chopped up Amazon box. But what they were able to do is actually put it on, see if it worked. So there's your technical feasibility. And they can obviously do their business model to determine if that would be viable. And so imagine, I have a 9-year-old at home. He does have all his limbs, but he likes trying things on and saying, wow, these fingers move, right? And so this got great feedback from others. But you could also, it's really easy, pull up some tape, move that tendon, right? Move that cord. It's really easy to iterate on it. And you can bring it back to your customer, in this case a child. Let's take your smoothie example. Maybe somebody says, I don't like this particular flavor profile. Well, let's go iterate. Take out an ingredient and retest. And so that way, I think of it as feedback. And you want it to be as candid as possible, right? And there are a lot of reasons it might not be candid, which is also another reason why asking your friends, while they're most immediate, sometimes have a little bit of bias in their feedback, especially mom. But it's also a good place to start. So here's the final product, in this case. It's actually 3D printed. It's the same design, right? But how much more time went into this one? And so now they have an MVP, right? It can still change because as people use it at scale, we start to learn what things happen with wear. What things happen as you fit a large range of people, right? Or a large range of tastes, or a large range of preferences. Or let's say that you prototype in iOS, and you want to then convert to Android. You start to learn the kinks, or your different market segments that you're looking at may have different preferences, right? So you want an MVP that shows, or your prototype that shows that this is viable. And you don't, this is not a prototype, right? This is ready for launch. It's an MVP. It's not perfect, but it can be launched. And actually, our engineering students are doing that over on the engineering campus. So they volunteer their time. They are open source models, and they build these for children. No. 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 And they've been around a while, right? But I would love to think that some of you might come up with something like this. Maybe you don't put this on a slide for the judges, but you use this to get something that will really wow them in your final pitch, right? And then, and have the customer feedback to go alongside it. That market testing is important. And let's say that in 3 years, you come back to me and you say, Dr. Pritchard, I wanted to show you what I did with my innovation challenge meetings, and we'll put your stuff up there, right? So that's what I would like to see. And I've had students, I mentored the innovation challenge winners last year, InnoHealth Diagnostics. They are now placed in the Mayo Clinic incubator for an internship, where they have a microfluidic chip that can detect tropical diseases with higher accuracy than is currently available. You can do it in home, in the hospital. And that iteration is important. What they had at Innovation Challenge was very different than what they have today, but they've continued to iterate, right? And they've continued to hone what does our MVP need to have. And so the more clear you can be early on in the process, the less work it will be to do later, right? Because if you prototype the wrong thing, you're going to have to start back at square one. That's a little bit different than iterating and making it better. So let's talk a little bit briefly, and then I'm going to open it up to Q&A. Some people, especially when it comes to software dev, because I saw about half of you were interested in the software component of some sort, be it an app or be it software as a service. I'm not sure exactly what you all have in mind. But having worked with many software teams and engineers, what I presented for design thinking is really a precursor to a typical software design process, right? And so that helps to make sure you're addressing the right thing. Now, you can go into standard lean business practices or agile software, and those are not mutually exclusive. It's a process that you can do together. And so let's say that you do a really rough prototype for Innovation Challenge, but you win $10,000, and you want to hire somebody to make a real prototype. You can do that, right? And you will spend less money over a year if you did this very thoughtfully. And so design thinking centers on the human, centers on the customer, right? And really what makes them happy. And so if you don't mind me asking, what made you think about doing smoothies?
When I drink coffee in the morning, it gives me a stomachache. It's very acidic. But I also am drinking a smoothie, so I'm holding a smoothie in my hand, but I also need this caffeine, and this hurts my stomach, and I need this nutrients. I want to make them one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It solves my problem, but does everybody have that problem? That's kind of where the question is.
And also, I'm always late in the morning and never have time to make breakfast, and I'm suffering all day. So if I can have a pre-made smoothie with caffeine that I can just grab when I'm leaving, my morning's saved.
Mm-hmm. So what I hear is that you understand the problem because you personally experienced it, right?
Yes.
And so that's a great way to start this design thinking process. Are there other customers? So you were both college students, right? You both may have similar class schedules, or you know each other pretty well. So if that is the primary market segment that you're going for, have you done a business model canvas of your idea or your proposed business?
Not completely, no.
Okay. So as you explore that, you can say, well, what are those market segments? And so who would we want to test our prototype with, right? So I have the same problem, so maybe professors I actually had a Smoothie King coffee smoothie yesterday. So, understanding what people are doing, and so you can test the right things on the right people are also good. Now, your MVP, is it going to test 5 market groups?
Probably doesn't need to.
Right. So how do you choose?
Who's the cheapest? Who's the most readily available?
Well, what's going to be, for your go-to-market strategy, what is going to be the best for your bottom line? So who do you think is going to be a good entry point? People that are most likely to buy and a good, decent number that you can easily access.
College kids, because they're not really set in their morning routine.
There you go. So maybe you want to prototype your smoothie. You don't need fancy cups. You might need a blender, and you might need to be able to iterate quickly, right? But you could even, you can get quick feedback on that prototype. Anybody else have, the people who said they were doing software or apps, that's pretty general. Anybody else want to talk about the type of prototype you might want to buy? Build.
So, I
Awesome, so
Okay.
So I know that there are some software available like online and apps where you could build like a prototype for an app that can be interactive depending on like your coding skills and different things like that. But I'm not too familiar with it. There's like so many different softwares out there that will help you build an app, but not all of them are cost efficient and really basic for beginners. So that would be an idea for app builders. But as far as anything that would be concrete, I don't know.
So one of the ones
Besides
I
developers.
recommend is Proto.io. It's a.
I've heard of that before.
They only have a 15-day free trial, right? So that's the downside. You gotta know what you want as soon as you start it and how to get something out pretty quick. But what I've done, even on teams that I've worked with, is just use Photoshop or even Paint. Pull it up in your Photos app and just swipe, right? So
Yeah.
you're pretending to click things. It's okay that they're not interactive. You're gonna get some feedback from that. And the advantage of that is they actually they can't explore the whole app, right? You're
Right.
walking them through, right? So it's almost like you have a mini pitch to your primary customer segment. So you're priming that pump. If you want to walk them through, this is how this might be. Now, if we talk about, well, we'll get to it in a second. I wanted to hear what you have to say back there.
I guess for, this is so loud. Okay, well, I guess for some people that are prototyping apps, I know like Figma is one that we're using, and that's pretty like straight, it's easy to like pick up. I know there's like another one like Axure, it's like Axure. That one's a little bit more complicated, but it really shows you like interactivity, like if you want to type in like your username and like swipe and stuff like that. Adobe XD is like another one for web apps and app prototypes. So I think my best resource is also Reddit. You can always ask questions on Reddit from people that do prototype and have that experience, and they can give lots of feedback. So Figma, yeah.
And Adobe XD is available on campus computers that have the Adobe Creative Suite installed.
If you're creating a software app, you also might want to consider hand drawing things first before heading straight to the software, like for building prototypes, because it could get a little overwhelming. You learning how to use the software on its own is like a lot to take in. So kind of just having like a draft on paper of what you want to do and then going to a prototyping building software, it helps a lot. Just-
And that is actually here in, you got to pick the right tools, right? So you might want to look at some of these before you dive in and learn them. But in dividing and conquering, storyboard it out. What are your customers doing, right? How are they getting to your product? What are they doing with your product? And then how are they leaving it, right? And that will help make sure that you, on this app development platform, whichever one you choose, you're only doing the key things you really need. What counts towards your MVP? And so I've seen storyboards. The InNOLEvation Hub is a great place to put everything up on a whiteboard. You can use Post-it notes because those are easy to take down. Well, no, we don't need that feature right now. Let's not spend time, especially if it's going to take you 2 nights banging your head against the wall on this new app development platform that you've never used before. Well, then don't, right? What is the key thing? And then go and execute that one. And that also makes the ask easier. If you have a friend in computer science who already knows this and it's going to take them 2 hours, if you focus on that key thing that you know you need, it's a smaller ask. And I also encourage you to, in choosing the right tools, choose the right people also. It's okay to delegate. And I've helped InNOLEvation teams find people, the right resources that we actually are probably going to have a Photoshop workshop soon over at the InNOLEvation Hub, just because some entrepreneurship students say, we need this. So there are other students on campus who need this too, so let's teach you the basics. And maybe that will help with building your brand, or maybe that's going to help you mock up what does the storyboard need to look like. The tools are important. And then dividing and conquering. So some things might be made one place, some things might be made somewhere else, right? Maybe you test in one location, he tests somewhere else. There are a lot of things that you can split, and the more that you can do in parallel, the better off you are. Because think about, I'm speaking as an electrical engineer now, parallel and series. But if you're doing things in series, there's always one after the other, right? You can't get out of order. And so if you have a bottleneck that's taking a long time where there's a delay, and I've seen this. Let's say that somebody sends something over to the engineering machine shop. Well, it's backed up and it's going to take an extra month. But we need to test this before we pitch, right? And this is actually usually the machine shop has got a lot of engineering projects, and it is in the spring semester. And so how can you do things in parallel? Go ahead and put that order in a couple months sooner. Finish up testing a couple of other things, and then be able to put it all together at the end. You also, in dividing and conquering, might be able to send one part to something off campus, right? But join it with other resources that you have on campus. Maybe that's on the software platform, or maybe that's talking to a professor about how you integrate a particular aspect. And then in putting it all together, you want it to be as real as it can be on the outside, so that people feel like they're really using it. But at the same time, it's okay to be rough, right? It would be much better, which would be better? To have an app with 10 menus, and different screens, and different features, but it has a few bugs in it. Let's say that it freezes from time to time, things like that. Or an app that has one function, but it works every time. Which would you think is better? One function that works every time. If you think about it, what does Uber do? Yeah, one thing, but they do it well, right? So this is the same advice that I gave. So I mentored John Wilcox from Diatech Solutions, and he came to me like, we want to do all these things, solve all this stuff. I said, well, that all sounds great. Pick one. Pick one and do it well. And so it is hard to pick the right one, but it's worth taking the time to do that before you start prototyping. So in your software dev, you still need to establish your need. This is just showing that here in the lean design experience and Agile, there are ways that we can incorporate all this work that you've done here in InNOLEvation Challenge and still make it real. Okay, so what you're doing in the challenge is real. And it's the same way that even design teams off campus will operate. But move fast, fail fast, and the more real feedback you can get, the better off you are. There's an interesting story about a prototype that was being done in a hotel. What they were going to try to do is do all room delivery by robot. And so the robot wasn't perfect, but they said, well, what's one feature that we can put on this robot that will be most critical, right? And they decided that it was being able to open and show the food, but to be able to interact with the customer and say, your food is ready, here you go, and close and end. So that was the only thing it was going to do. Show up at the door with some food, hand it off, and be done. And so as soon as the door closed, that test period was over. Did the robot underneath have everything final? Was that software final? No, none of it. It was actually a 3D printed shell on top that was done over a weekend, right? But it was real enough that they could figure out what the customers might want. And what they found was actually the prototype wasn't about making sure the doors open and close. I mean, you got to do that, right? But the actual key product feature for their MVP was personality, to make people comfortable with using a robot. And so you might discover things in your prototyping that your MVP and your critical features are different than what you originally thought, and that's okay. And I would say to avoid feature creep. So it'll be very, very tempting to keep adding things. Oh, I learned how to use this software. I can go ahead and add this button, add this thing. I'm getting better at this. I'm rocking and rolling. This is wonderful. But is that going to help you with desirability? Is that going to help you prove that you're delivering something useful to your customers, that they want and that they will pay for? So, anybody have some examples that you might want to explore while we still have a little bit of time?
These two things kind of think about the don't necessarily are necessarily confusing. Yeah, one of them is, should it be a healthy but also improve electrolyte? Because our idea is you're drinking smoothies, so you already want to drink. Does that matter to your customer? So think about that. Another one is like, does it need to have a social edge? when a normal customer buys a beverage, is that a company that they really feel needs to have the biggest social impact? Sometimes we don't know if we need it.
And so I would say that's market testing, right? Which goes into prototyping. So, but it is still distinct and different. So you could have a smoothie a prototype that people still taste without testing whether your market needs that social aspect, right? So the other thing that we do in engineering is we test features in a specific way by design experiments, and statistics come in there. You don't have to do that for Innovation Challenge, but it allows us to see if we added something like that, how much edge does that give us, right? And so that's something useful to know so you can decide whether to include it. But first test, do people want it, period. Then move with the boost, right? But your MVP needs to be, will people drink it, right? Mm-hmm. And I have to say, that's a prototype. I've never done a prototype like that. So, it's a fun one. There you go. Anyone else? No? Are you still deciding what prototypes you want? Or what problem you're tackling? Or where are you in the process?
Are you asking me specifically?
No, anyone who hasn't.
Okay.
Who
Well, I
hasn't.
mean, we have an idea that we want to do, but I don't know how that fits into prototyping.
Okay.
So we want to create a zero-waste supermarket,
Mhm.
and I just don't know what part of that would be prototyping.
Okay.
So that's why I'm.
So have you done a business model canvas of your hypothetical?
Started, I just wanted, like, completed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the key value proposition? And what is the key customer? And so then how would your prototype would be the delivery of that, right? So depending on what you see as that value proposition is the value, so that's what will determine which feature it is you want to test, right? I mean, if you're a big corporation, you could come into to Lucky's and just say, hey, do you mind if we take this corner over here and have something with zero waste and see if people who are already shopping will walk in and do it, right? That would be a prototype. But you can also prototype in smaller ways, especially specific things for your value proposition. And so that'll help you design a solution. Because if you think about how would you fail fast, what's the kind of feedback that you need? That will help you build that prototype, because you don't build a whole store first,
Yeah.
right? So maybe it's just produce, or maybe it's just, maybe you can pick a department. Maybe you pick a geographic, but you need to narrow it down into that MVP. And there is, for instance, to go with the food sector. I talked to a group from Boston College that won one of their pitch contests. And she was doing it was called Brews, and she was delivering vegetables and fruits that were not ready for shelves because of, whatever flaws, but they were perfectly edible, right? And so she actually did subscription boxes. And that prototype was actual shoe boxes in the back of her car going out to people on a weekend. And to determine would they buy it, that type of fruit with that type of delivery system. But they, start off with 5 customers, right? But they were able to prototype it, even though those boxes weren't perfect and the supply chain wasn't all the way there, but they could see. So maybe if lack of waste is your value prop, find the most wasteful place and prototype that, and see if people engage with it.
Was she successful with that boost product?
It sounded like it when I talked to her. She had ramped up, she had hired on at least 3 other students to help with deliveries. They had as much as they could possibly handle. And they had a lot of people coming to them with food that they couldn't yet process. So, yeah.
I'm not sure if it was just like the name, but I don't know if I've heard of it before, but I knew exactly what you were talking about. As soon as you said it. So I don't know if it was because it was her like specific company that was the reason I heard of it, but I knew exactly what you were talking
Yeah,
about.
I've
So
seen an Instagram ad that is very similar to that I thought was a great idea. It was like, oh, this radish is delicious, but nobody wants it. You You
Yeah.
want it?
It's a good marketing right there. So the other thing is you're connecting your prototype to, you're helping somebody imagine this potential final product that is beautiful and wonderful, right? And that's the point of your prototype, is to show feasibility, right? Enough for somebody to buy it, give you an award at the challenge, or give you money to grow your business. And so this connects very well to that. You can tell they're the same thing, right? And so you want your prototype to sell your vision, right? And so that can also help you as you determine your value proposition, you hone in on that. What prototype is going to help you showcase that, your ability to use that, show that value to your customer more than anything else. So, but you don't have to do it all. That's the other relief, right? You don't have to do it all. It doesn't have to be perfect, but keep putting it out there to get feedback. So I will, since we don't have a lot more participating on ideas that they've got, I'll give you an example that I'm doing right now. I'm commercializing some technology from the university that came out of collaboration that I'm doing on the research side. And so the problem is that people who have peripheral vascular disease have pain when walking, even just to the mailbox, right? So their solution is, well, I'm just not going to walk because it hurts, right? And the problem is the doctor says, well, you really should walk. This is the best thing for you, is exercise. Even the little that you can walk, please do it. But there aren't a lot of medications for them, and then it gets to the point where you wind up with amputations, large surgeries that don't always go well. And so we have an ankle splint that you wear that stretches every day, and we get some of the benefits of exercise from stretching, even though we don't have all of them. But we can reduce pain and increase walking distance. And so in order to do that, we've modified, actually I have a study going on at the Mayo Clinic right now, and we modified a bunch of existing splints with the key things that we need to deliver, right? And that key thing is now turning into a patient study at the Mayo Clinic that is our feasibility, right? And we didn't go through and build a whole manufacturing plant to make. I mean, we need 80, 100 of these. But to get that first prototype out, we actually probably made, I don't know, 25 prototypes that didn't work, or didn't work as well as we wanted them to. And so in my case, I've got to get to a particular patient. I can't do that without a lot of permissions, right? So we also want to find something that's easy and quick to test. So what do? I tested it on myself. I tested it on my assistant. Tested it on anybody who, we can't, there are rules to what we can do, but you can ask a friend a favor, right? And so I don't want you thinking that any of these are human subjects reviews or anything like that. But being able to get as close to your real customer and get as real feedback as you can is very important. And I would be happy if anybody needs to really build something, just call me up and we'll make an appointment, and I'll help you through how to do that. If you need to have something made, maybe it's a display shelf for your produce, right? How are you going to build that? Where are you going to find the help or the resources? We can connect you to that. Maybe it's you need to sit down at the Innovation Hub and get some hardware. I want to find this solution. It's right here. So if you need help picking the right tools, send me an email. I'm happy to help. If you are not really sure how to put it all together, I'm happy to help with that too, or enlist your friends and figure out what does that look like. I could show you even a couple of apps that I've prototyped with none of these websites, just boxes and Photoshop, because that gets the point across really quickly. You can even do it in PowerPoint if you want. There are little images you can download that look like a phone, and you can look like it would look like. So the sooner that you can figure out how is somebody interacting with this, so that I can figure out what my prototype looks like, the better. So I was hoping we were going to have more specific projects to jump in and explore, but I really like the smoothie idea. And anyone else have more questions for me?
Do you have contact information?
Yes. It is right here. emily.pritchard@med.fsu.edu.
For the new, student, how much branding or marketing is necessary, or do you think almost none at all? Just the actual juice itself would be enough? Do you think it takes a name and a logo, or do you think you should go as the most basic, what does it taste?
Well, your prototype is the what does it taste like, right? But you're going to get the most feedback to make it as real as possible, right? So we come back to that realness to say, okay, let's make it as real as we can, right? That was pretty darn close, but in a short amount of time. And you're probably going to have a name and a logo for your pitch. So go ahead and give it now, and you could even sketch it on the side of your cup. And there are a lot of things that you could do, or you could have a sticker made with them on there. Sometimes prototype testing is done without any label whatsoever, so you get candid feedback, right? So that people are not colored by brand. So you could actually do testing your product next to others to see consumer preference testing. And that's actually what I did with my prototypes, is I had multiple ones, and we tried them all and said which ones worked best. Because just having one person try one smoothie is a little bit different than having them try 3, right? So how many prototypes are you going to make, and how do you iterate on them? So when you have someone who's willing to try your prototype, make the most of your time with them, right? So don't waste their time, but don't keep them too long either. You might want to call them back. Say, could you come back next week? I'm going to have something else new. And you probably do your idea of a survey. I think is a great way to track your prototypes over time, because I think you may also notice, I've seen this in innovation teams before, where because you're continually iterating, you never have a full feedback cycle. And it is very helpful to be able to track, and it's helpful to a judge. Oh, we did this, and this, and this, and we're evolving. That's a great story to tell, right? It shows that you're organized, it shows that you're testing these MVPs, and that you're going to be ready for a launch when the time comes. Anyone else? This is the first time I've given one of these workshops, so this is a prototype for me, right? So I would love to hear your candid feedback as well as to how we can best prepare you for what you need, especially this early on in the challenge, because it sounds like about half of you haven't quite thought about what your prototype needs to be. So you don't know what you're prototyping yet, which is that precursor step. So if we need to do another little workshop later when you're farther down the road, and we can discuss specifics, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, because I feel we're pretty early on, right?
Yeah.
And prototyping is that last, and testing, that last step. So having careful preparation right now on the front end before you start prototyping is really going to save you a lot of headache later on. And it sounds like even in some of the thought work that you've done today, you've gotten a little bit farther down that road, right? So I would encourage you to keep documenting your process so that you can point back and go, wow, well, that was even before Halloween, but at least we're starting to think about these things. And don't forget to sign out on your way out if you didn't sign in when you first came. Thank you.
Yeah, this is really